So welcome everybody. Today I'm going to be talking for today's webcast, be prepared when business uncertainty hits, and it will, with Oracle scenario modeling. So, started here. A little bit about myself. My name is Kevin Whalen. One here. More than enough about me. I'm an Oracle certified specialist in planning and S-Base. I've been working with it as a consultant for about 15 years total. I've had functional roles in FP&A and Treasury, so I've been using the product as a user. I've been implementing it from when it was on-prem until it got into the cloud. I presented at several different conferences, and from education, I'm just kind of a nerd. You can kind of see from my picture, I enjoy golf and Arsenal, and you can follow me on Twitter at WhaleCat, check out my blog, and have some of the YouTube videos that excuse me, you may have seen as part of the Play It Forward series with Interrel. So who is Interrel? If you're not familiar with Argo, Interrel, we have a whole bunch of recognized experts. We've got directors, ACE alumni. We have a bunch of books that used to be really popular before the cloud that changes every month, but those were the Look Smarter Than You Are series. We've won a bunch of awards. We've now been full service. The Argo, now that we're under that umbrella, we now have other things that we can offer. Besides, the Interrel is basically the exact same Interrel as you've always known it, focusing on the EPM space, but now we have the ERP and a lot other spaces under the Argo umbrella, so offering a lot more products and services. We do have a 77% net promoter score. That's basically when you come in and you give a survey, whether or not you would promote this or whether you'd recommend this company or not. Our average for the system integrators is 24, and the global system integrators is 9%. So 77% is really world-class. And so that's something to be proud of. So what I'm going to go over today is talking about, here's my agenda, business planning in uncertain times. Talk a little bit about the general pieces of that. Then I'm going to show you what scenario modeling is, give you an introduction. Then I'm going to go into strategic modeling and the creating scenarios using the scenario manager. And then I'm going to kick it up a notch, particularly for the more statistical minded people, and show you how the new Monte Carlo simulation feature within strategic modeling is done. And then I'll have a recap and questions. You can use the chat if you have questions, but I may be on a roll and miss it. But definitely at the end, there will be time to go through and talk about any questions that you have. So let's kick it off with an introduction to scenario modeling. What exactly is scenario modeling? In the general sense, this is really planning for uncertainty. This is how we have ideas. If we start thinking about different things besides just the one path, maybe we're going to learn how to react in different situations. Even if there's an outlier event, if we've actually thought about some things beyond what our business, our main core is, we can start preparing for outlier events like COVID. So this is not just coming up with a single number. This is coming up with our best case, worst case, everything in between, kind of a what if this happens, what if that happens? And then we need to understand what are those impacts if those things do happen on the entire company. How's that going to be our way of surviving? One of the things, a quote from Dwight Eisenhower was, "I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." I found this out when I was working in FP&A, and we spent hundreds of thousands of man hours coming together with a budget. We get the budget approved by the board of directors. The number was great. Then about an hour later, they approved an initiative. That initiative just made the whole piece, the whole budget worthless, because those numbers are no longer applicable because we're having all these new things happening with this new initiative that the board approved. So the idea is kind of going through the process of doing a plan is you have to do it, you have to understand how your business works, but the actual plan itself is pretty much useless unless you really understand how your plan, how it's going to drive your decisions. So the real purpose of planning, from one of the fathers of strategic modeling, is strategic planning is it's not to make the plans, but it's to change the mental models that the decision makers have. So in other words, I'm putting a whole bunch of numbers together. Is somebody going to make a different decision? If they're not making a different decision, then what's the point of putting all these numbers together? You really need to have somebody that's going to be in the position of making those decisions, say, well, this is backed up by this, and this is backed up by that, and that's why I'm having these numbers. Otherwise, there's no point. And really, the important thing right now is to learn faster than your competitors, because when things happen, like COVID, you don't have a way of reacting. You need to be quick and agile and turn things around quickly. Quote coming in from our own fearless leader, Edward Roski, if you only have one plan, you're planning to be wrong. So like right here, I have a plan and I'm looking at my net income in 2031 of 134.5 million. Okay, nice number, but I'm pretty much guaranteed I know that number is wrong. I don't know what's going to happen between now and 2031, and therefore that number is basically useless unless I'm using it to make a decision. But if I came in with a best case, a worst case, and I said, if this happens, do we need to start looking at taking out more debt? Do we need to start paying up our dividends? Can we put those up? Those kind of questions, those kind of decisions could be answered, but it's not necessarily answered with just one single number. It needs to have different scenarios. What if this happens? How am I going to react? So really lately, the focus now has been on timeliness over precision. If I work really hard at getting that number, that 136 million, that's useless, really, unless I'm making different, if it's going to take me forever to update it and I'm just focused on one number. I need a whole series of numbers to say, what am I going to do? How do I turn this ship quickly if I need to? And these unprecedented events, what did we see? We saw clothing companies started making masks. They started switching distilleries. Now I'm switching it, instead of making booze, I'm making a hand sanitizer. You probably think, oh, I don't need to barrel age that kind of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of changes happening in your business. Commercial airlines maybe doing cargo onlys, moving to online classes for universities. All sorts of companies have turned around and was able to do well, and some of the other ones didn't do so well because they weren't able to make decisions. What are some of the scenarios? Maybe I have a change in interest rate. Does that mean my debt payments change? Do I need to look at my line of credits? Is consumer spending going to be impacted? Is that going to impact my revenue? Maybe customers now are more work from home or going to office. Things about raw materials. How's the cost of goods sold on that? Can I get those raw materials? Do I have constraints in my supply chain? Am I getting my product to my customers on time? All of these kind of questions that are going to have cash impact. And I really need to understand how much of a cash impact and what does that mean as my company as a whole. So what most people do for these kind of things is use Excel. Everybody has Excel. I'm going to give a little comparison to strategic modeling. One of the things with Excel is it is vastly flexible. It's the Wild West. You could put anything you want in it. It's great. It works for everything. It's very powerful. Everybody's already using it. Everybody has it. And all the financial people are well trained in it. The problem is there's no accounting integrity. Because it's the Wild West, I could put anything in. I could have retained earnings in my assets or something like that. Things that don't make any sense. It doesn't matter. It's just a line in Excel. Everything is custom. Everything I'm doing, I have to build from scratch. If I want to say there's a change in a balance sheet account, how does that impact the cash flow? Well, I've got to go write 2 lines. I got to write the balance sheet and I'm going to say the change in and all that stuff. So doesn't have the accounting built in. Anytime I'm making changes, I've seen a lot of times when, what is your net income in 2036? It is pound ref. There's ref errors, there's linked errors, there's hard coding. Overly complex. And anytime I want to update it, I've spent hours and hours trying to update a 200 tab Excel sheet because we wanted to change one of the years from yearly to quarterly or add a year to it. And then you're trying to make sure all the links aren't broken and there isn't any hard coded stuff. In the finance world, a lot of times it's a lot of pressure. I've been in like midnight trying to get out a long-range forecast to get it to the board of directors. So okay, we'll just make this one work for now on a hard code these 3 numbers or whatever. There you go, works out great. Then next month comes along, you dust off the model, you start pushing it out again, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot that these were hard coded and this is giving me a different answer, that kind of stuff. So the beauty of strategic modeling, it is one source of the truth. It's going to give you your accounting integrity. Income statement's always going to flow into your balance sheet and cash flow. If I make a change in revenue, it's going to flow through net income, which flows into retained earnings. It's going to go cash flow of operations. It's all going to be built on accounting integrity. I have an Excel interface, so I'm used to that kind of look. I can integrate this directly with planning, so it makes it easy to update. If I come up with some new, here come the new actuals, I can just run a quick rule, and all of a sudden now I have the latest updated actuals. It's driver based, so this makes the scenario modeling really easy. So I can use some pretty easy forecasting methods. So I'm really getting rid of focusing on being good at Excel, which a lot of people are really good at Excel. And I'm now thinking about what does this what does my company do? What is my business? What I'm, more focused on that than trying to figure out why does this link turn on line 17 and here it's on line 53, and am I linking at the right time? And do I have the latest information on this? There's also features like the debt schedule, audit trail, and everything. The cons of strategic modeling, it is a new product. There will be a learning curve. It's going to require customization to make it fit to your needs. And you do need the Oracle Cloud. It's not something that everybody has. But the nice thing now, as opposed to when it was on-prem and it was very expensive and standalone, it is integrated with ePBCS. So you basically, most people that are using planning already have it. It's just another module to turn on. So what I've seen in my experience, it's a typical long-range planning process, is you have your FP&A groups, financial planning analysis, and they work on the income statement or around operating income, the EBIT part. Then the treasury is working on the balance sheet pieces. And then there's going to be CapEx assumptions that are going to be linking the two. And then you're going to integrate that when you're going to build a full income statement, you get your depreciation, your interest expense, interest income, et cetera. And then there's going to be, here's your cash flow coming out of that. But really, cash is king. The saying goes, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. So really we should be spending more time on understanding what type of liquidity we have, what type of resources we have to be able to invest or not. Here's a way I have a feedback loop of process planning. If you have your corporate and FP&A treasury teams, they're going to be setting up the regional targets, the kind of top down. They're going to be getting input from the executives, from the board, et cetera, and kind of knowing where the company needs to be headed. The regional FP&A teams, they could be spread out throughout the globe. They're going to have their boots on the ground. They're going to know the details of their parts of the business a lot better than anybody else. So they're going to have the bottoms up approach. So they're going to know all the little bits and pieces. So you kind of put those together into a forecast, send all that into, take the forecast, extrapolate it out. You got your strategic modeling. Now the corporate FP&A teams can start doing scenario analysis, different saying, what if this happens? What if that happens? How does that look? And then we could feed that back into an S-based reporting cube, which is going to make it easily digestible for everybody to see. How it can look for the data flow is if I have the ePBCS frameworks, maybe CapEx, projects, workforce, I'm getting all the detail level, like workforce, I'm going to get down into the headcount level and that kind of stuff. That's going to feed me a salary line into financials. I'm going to be getting my actuals coming into financials from the GL, EBS, HFM, FCCS, other pieces. You're going to have planners inputting planning forms. And so now I'm going to have a good look at what my company looks like now or into the near future, like a forecast period of the next year or the plan for the year after, something like that. So now I want to start taking that stuff and leverage the strategic modeling. I'm going to go start blowing this out further out. I'm going to start throwing scenarios at it and a longer, higher picture look. I can start putting in some Excel schedules into strategic modeling if I have like maybe the debt schedule or something from treasury, something like that. And again, I'm going to take all this and I'll have an S-based reporting cube so the right people can start taking a look at it. So how do I do this? How do I get into strategic modeling? It just comes with the Oracle Planning Cloud. You enable it like any of the other frameworks, but it's really easy. There's no questions on it. Like enabling workforce, you've got to go through a bunch of different steps, even enabling financials. Am I going to want the balance sheet? Do I want the cash flow, the revenue, that kind of stuff? There's nothing. It's just on or off. You just turn it on. It is a custom financial engine. It is not S-based based. So there is no cube. It's not taking up any of your cubes. It doesn't do anything with the ASO, BSO, or anything like that. It is strictly its own financial engine, and it doesn't require any of the cubes. It integrates directly with it. You can use Groovy scripting, or you can use data maps to go back and forth. It's also available in SmartView. It's a kind of, mentioned before, everybody loves their Excel. Well, this doesn't take away Excel. This isn't exclusive of it. In fact, there's some features still in Excel, and there's some features on the web that are different, but most of them are about the same. So it's kind of use the interface that you choose. How you do it, you just set it up like the other downloads. Just take the little arrow next to your name, find strategic modeling. One thing I noticed after you download it, go to the folder where you downloaded it and click on it, and then right click and run as administrator. I've seen problems where people just try to run it. So that's why I had a little graphic down there. Run that as an administrator to make sure it's running right. You will also have to have put in SmartView first, but I think they give you an error if you don't. So that's self-explanatory. So now I've downloaded this and I've put it into SmartView, and look, I've got a new ribbon. So, but I am in Excel. You can kind of see from the top, I haven't left Excel here. I've got all these things now, options available to me for modeling. Also, I've got now a option in my Smart View panel. So when I open up the Smart View panel, I have strategic modeling. Now I can access my models, my consolidations, and the templates. So everything is available to me. And again, I am back into Excel. So I'm not away from Excel. So how do I integrate? I'd mentioned there's a couple ways. You can do Groovy or you can do data exchange. Groovy is very flexible. You can define a lot of complex mapping. You can do scaling. You can do anything you really want. It's a really powerful new language that not new, but new to Oracle, and it's being utilized a lot. I use it all over the place now. Problem is, it is object-oriented language, so it is difficult for non-coders coming from a finance world. There was a bit of a learning curve for me. It's going to be higher maintenance. You also have the data maps under the data exchange. That's easy for non-coders. It's going to have a graphical interface. It's not as flexible, but it's powerful, and it has an Excel template. So that's really nice because I can take my data map, I can export it to Excel, and now if I have 200 accounts that I want to map, I can just cut and paste. So that makes it a lot easier. As you can kind of see, here's just an example of the Groovy script. It's going to be a different language. It's going to be a script. The data exchange, again, I have source and target. It's pretty easy. I can select a model going to an entity, a scenario to a different scenario. I can map accounts. Again, this is all very nice and easy, and it doesn't take any coding. It doesn't take anything, and it's easy to audit and easy to understand for finance people to self-serve. The thing I've been doing is a little bit of a hybrid. I'm using a Groovy script to run the data map. So what I have here is these 6 lines are pretty simple, and it's basically saying run the data map. So everything's in the map. So if anybody needs, and finance needs to make a change, they can self-serve and they can go change any of those mappings, do it themselves. But it has this piece, so I'm running it. So what's nice is I've added this to pushing something to strategic modeling. Now that it's a business rule, as a Groovy script, I can now make a right-click menu, and I could say, okay, this data looks good. I'm in planning now. I want to push this to strategic modeling, or maybe I want to push the balance sheet. Maybe I want to push between strategic models. I can run all those maps from here, and then I could have the ability to do these runtime prompts. I can change, as you see at the top, the scenario, years, quarters, and version. I can make those changes on the fly, so the user now can have some flexibility at runtime to say, I want to run this scenario. Let's push actuals over into the new strategic model, or let's use forecast as the base of a strategic model, that kind of stuff. You can get that set and customized simply for the user is just a right-click menu, and it doesn't take much programming. So when I'm talking about models, getting into the heart of what strategic modeling is you open up, you'll start creating a new model, and you're going to have a built-in income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. These are going to be completely integrated. As I said before, accounting integrity is already there. So the income statement, if you change something in sales, it'll flow through net income, which will flow right into retained earnings. Everything will balance. The balance sheet will always balance. The cash will be preserved. So what I'm doing is now I'm creating a section of my company as a model. I can link these together in a consolidation view so I can get a view of the whole company. So this is when you start thinking about the strategy of strategic. Why am I building these things? What kind of scenarios would I be looking at? Maybe I want to see how would it change if I changed the legal structure, or do I look at everything geographically? Am I going to do a merger? Am I going to divestiture? Something like that. So I may want to build this down to the plant level. I might be doing it at the store level. I might be doing it higher. I might be doing it, in Europe. It depends. It's all based on how your company is. But this could kind of link to how you do entities, an entity hierarchy in your planning. But again, it doesn't have to be that. And it's kind of the ways that you want to think of separate groups, because now I can start applying scenarios to each one of these models. So simply to create it, it's very easy. You just put a name in it. You can create the first one maybe from a template. You can look at a couple of different industry types: retail, higher ed, healthcare. They're mostly similar, but there's going to be different reports. There might be different account groupings or some different accounts, some things like that for these that are maybe specialized more to an industry. And then after you've created one model, very simply, you can just recreate it. Instead of create model from template, you would just say create model from other model, existing model, and then I now start creating models from my models. So if I build one that's pretty good, I can start going, okay, I'm going to make all my models look like this now. and just start building off of that. And that's how I can start creating my hierarchy, building models off of other models. They also have the entity change management, which means if I make a change in one, I can now push it. So if I come up with like 30 different models that are all linked together, I don't want to have to open 30 models and make 30 changes. I can make a wholesale change using entity change management. The engine that kind of runs it all, and this is how the balance sheet balances and the cash flows all maintain integrity, is the funding options. This is where I come in and I can start selecting. I have two things I need to select. One is to apply cash surplus to. This is like if I have an excess, my net incomes are going well, what am I doing with it? Well, maybe I want to start paying down the revolving credit, and then I'm going to have marketable securities, and then I'll have excess marketable securities beyond that. Similarly, if things are going poorly and I have a scenario where things are happening and they're not looking good, how am I going to deal with that? Well, first I'll use my marketing security, and then I'm going to take out a revolver, and lastly, I'm going to have to take out some long-term debt. So it's kind of like, how do I want to use this in your pecking order, and what different financial instruments do I have to use? And you can kind of see you have a whole bunch of selections, and you can customize these as you want. So everything is based on accounts. So you start looking at, if you kind of thought about strategic modeling as how do I look at it as multidimensional? As I mentioned, it's not multidimensional. It's not S-based. But if you want to think about it like that, you would think there would be account, time, and scenario would basically be the different dimensions. But the account is pretty much the heart of all the models. So what I have is these accounts, as I said, all have accounting integrity. So these are permanently linked and they're defined. So V1000 is always sales. I can change it to say revenue. I can change it to say whatever it is, but it's always going to act like sales does from a GAAP perspective. It's going to be the revenue coming in, and then it's going to, be negated by the expenses and come up with net income. You can now, I'm like, well, my company's different. Well, your company's at some point has sales and some or should have sales, but has expenses or whatever, even if the number is zero. But I can start customizing it by doing sub-accounts. So I can take this, like I have sales, and I can sub-account it into three parts of sales: product sales, service revenue, and maintenance revenue. So now they all act as sales from an accounting perspective, but then they're going to come in, and then I'm going to have my cost of goods sold, and now I've come in and sub-accounted my SG&A expenses. So now I'm getting closer and closer, and you should be able to, without any difficulty, recreate your income statement. And same thing on the balance sheet, that kind of stuff. And I have an ability to create account groups. Here I have operating activity, so might not necessarily be something that's income statement, but it could have some things that are related to each other. So if I look at the account, each one has two parts, an input and an output. So let's look at that first one. This is also, besides the customization of doing sub-accounts, I have all these memo accounts. I have some accounts that are off kind of on the side. They are not linked to any of the accounting stuff. So I can do whatever I would like with them. And I could link those back into the predefined accounts. So what I've done here is I've created two memo accounts, unit volume and product price. And I've linked those via formula to product sales. The sales, again, goes into the revenue, net income, et cetera. So unit volume, as you see, there's two pieces. I have unit volume and forecast as a growth rate. So that's the forecast method I've selected. So up to 2020, those are actuals. So when you see in 2020, 19,134 in green, that is the input equals the output because it's history. But if you see in 2021, the input is 4. So what I'm doing now is saying, give me a growth rate of 4%, so that 19,134 becomes 19,9. And now I'm simply growing that by 4% every year. Similarly, I did the same thing with product price. I grew that by 5%, took 45, it's 47,250, et cetera. And then what I've done is product sales is volume times price, and therefore I'm doing that. But real easy to forecast, real easy to come in on this. And if somebody wants to change the forecast method, it's easy enough. I can come in, I can change it to actual value, growth rate. These are all the out of the box pieces. We kind of think about what if somebody came in and said, I want growth rate, or I want growth rate year over year, or I want percentage of another account. In Excel, you're kind of having to recreate all the formulas, recreate all the things you're doing. Here, it's just a simple drop-down list. I also have the ability to do free-form formulas. Again, it's not the scripting language or so, it's going to be like Excel, kind of. You do have the abilities to do like ifs and depreciations and nots and that kind of stuff, max mins. So I do have those kind of functions, as well as just, putting, this is just those two accounts I mentioned I created before, price times volume. And I have a little way to put a method description in. So now when I'm on that original page, I can kind of see what my description is. And here we are, we're ready to go. And the other beauty here with the accounts is the audit trail. This is something because, why are we building all these models? What are we doing? It's really important to be able to understand where those numbers come from. That's going to be the big thing when somebody comes in and you say, wait a minute, operating profit in 2018, how did you get 141 million? That's not the right number. Then I can say, well, okay, click on it. Here we go. And this can be done from a report or from the account view. It's anywhere within strategic modeling. You can see that I say, oh, it's built from taxable income minus taxable operating income and then interest expense. And then I can click in further. I say, oh, that interest expense at 74 million, that's the problem. What's that from? I can click in on that. It'll give me all the makeup of that. So I can just keep drilling back until I get to the source of whatever that number is. So it's really, really powerful, really something that gives you transparency into where the numbers come from. So let's get into talking about creating scenarios. As I mentioned, this is one of the powerful things I've done. So I've come in or powerful things about strategic modeling. So there's a scenario manager, and what I'm doing now is I have, so I've built off my model. I have a model, I've created an income statement, cash flow, I got these pieces out, I've forecasted it out, and I've come up with one number. And now I go, okay, well, that's, as I mentioned a while ago, having one number isn't the right answer. I need to understand what happens. What if this happens? What if I change LIBOR? What if I change my growth? What if I change those 4% to the 5%, or 6 to 10%, those kind of things. So I have this piece, this tool called Scenario Manager. It's very easy to create scenarios, and I can put them together and I can combine them. So here I came in and I'm building a scenario premium pricing strategy. What if we start raising the price? I don't want to sit here and have to do everything. I want to tinker with the base as I'm fixing up things and I'm fixing up how inventory changes, whatever I'm doing else there. I don't want to play with it in this scenario, but I really want to use this scenario just to play with the price. I want to play with the product price. I want to change it. I want to say, what if I change that product price growth from 5% to 10%? Or what if I start with a higher product price? Here, I just select the product price as the account. That means that's going to be the account that I can flex on the scenario. And then I have all sorts of options to deal with this new scenario, and it's based off the base. And then I can grow another scenario, a rapid growth scenario. Maybe I want to start changing volume on that. And I want to take it that's inheriting from the premium pricing strategy, kind of see on the right from the base scenario. So it can inherit off of each other. And this is giving me all sorts of options. Once I've created a scenario, I can simply select it from the drop-down list. Here I have the premium pricing strategy selected, but if I switched over to capital addition or some of the other pieces, I can start seeing my numbers as I'm working on it side by side right here in Excel, right next to each other, and it's getting really powerful. Because then I can start building these freestyle reports. These are within strategic modeling. The nice thing about having things inside strategic modeling is now I can still use the audit trail. I can kind of click on that downside case at 726 million, and I can see that it came from sales, the service revenue, the maintenance revenue. I can start looking into those and drilling back. But it also is giving me an ability to view the different cases side by side, and it has some graphing capabilities. I wouldn't put this as your sole reporting reports. It's a tiny bit clunky and stuff, but it's powerful to have inside, and particularly when you're working on the model and you're developing different financial scenarios and forecasts, it's nice to have this right within the product. So again, you can see I'm comparing the forecast expansion, the premium pricing, upside, downside. I'm putting all next to each other. And this is flowing through the whole model. This is flowing through everything. So I can take a look at my gross profit. I could go all the way to net income. I could go to retained earnings. I could look at my cash or my dividends or any of the other pieces that I've modeled out. I could put those on here and I could see what it means just by flexing a percentage within my volume or within my price or something like that, and just how it flows through with all the accounting integrity. I don't have to go in and build different models. I don't have different Excel sheets. I don't have different things. It's all right here together. So once I've built the models, as I mentioned, you take them and you can put them into a consolidation view. So it's basically going to be a hierarchy of how things flow into each other. Right here, I have the cleverly named Global Corp. And under Global Corp, there is the sales from US, we've got the EMEA, APAC, and now you're looking at a acquisition target. So you can kind of see how they roll in. I have different methods that I can do. So this is going to keep the, as accounting would go, is it a full consolidation? Is it minority interest? Is it equity? That kind of stuff based on the ownership. You can see also I have ownership. I could be doing, I can model joint ventures. I can model all sorts of different complex business structures with this. But the focus here on this one is the scenario. If you see, I can select now all the different scenarios that I've created inside the those models. So now I've got upsides and premium pricing strategy, added capital, downside case. I put all these together into what's called a business case. So right now I've got my business case is going to be what are we going to the board of directors with this thought of an acquisition? And since everything rolls up, has all the accounting integrity, I can take a really good look at Global Corp and I can see what it looks like for different business cases, different scenario combinations. What does it do? And it's as easy as picking something up and selecting a different scenario that I've created from a drop-down list. I'm not going through and recreating Excel sheets. I'm not trying to remember which one was linked to what. Where did I get this one from? I have one version of the truth and I can just start riffing off of that to come up with all sorts of different what ifs. So it makes it really agile, flexible, and quick. And somebody comes back and says, well, you know what, we're actually starting to think that the sales at APAC, so let's put that as an upside case instead of the base. How does that change things? How is that going to impact the bottom line of Global Corp? It's just really quick and really easy to run and do. And now I have all sorts of different scenarios and different what ifs. So I'm not just thinking about one number. So let's take this up to one more level, particularly for the statistical nerds like myself here, using the Monte Carlo simulations. So what are Monte Carlo simulations? Well, they're computational algorithms that have random sampling to get your results. They're used to determine risk impact. So this is kind of a big thing in different risk areas. It's used in science, it's used in finance, it's used in a lot of different places. It also removes the bias of the modeler. Maybe I'm just taking what I saw last year, will have to be somewhat what it was this year. Therefore, I'm just kind of forcing my own bias into these models. So let's talk a little bit about the history of Monte Carlo simulations. I'll give you a little bit better idea where they came from and what they are. So basically, years ago, on the Manhattan Project, which was World War II, when they're coming up with their designing the nuclear weapons, there was a guy named Stanislaw Ulam. He got sick. He got really bored, and he goes, "I'm going to play solitaire. I got nothing else to do. I'm going to sit here and play solitaire. There's no Netflix." So he starts doing it, and he goes, "Well, I'm a mathematician. How come I can't figure out what's the odds of me winning?" Well, the problem is there's different decisions you make. And once you make a decision, there was actually more pieces. There's just too many variables. There's different ways that they could be dealt. There's different pieces that come on. And he's like, I can't come up with just a mathematical model. You know what? One of the guys I'm working on this project with, von Neumann, he has this new thing called ENIAC. And this is a Monte Carlo simulation. It's a calculations, and it's a computer. So it's like, what's this new computer thing? Well, how about this? Instead of me coming in and try to figure out what the math is, why don't I just have the computer play 100 games of solitaire really quickly and see what it is? And then I can start counting how many wins and how many losses. And after a while, I'm just going to start getting into a distribution. I can figure out how many wins and how many times I lost. So it turned out it worked really well. He can come in and try to figure out these pieces. And he said, you know what, let's start applying this now to the next level. Let's start taking it in with our what we're doing on the project. So he brought this over to Los Alamos, and you know, they started. The thing is, they had the data. They knew the average distance a neutron could travel in a substance before it gave off the energy, how much energy it was likely to give, but they weren't exactly sure how to do every single time with the conventional deterministic mathematical models. So what they ended up doing is running this Monte Carlo simulation, and that gave them better chances of understanding what the outcomes are going to be from different parts. And this has really helped them advance to the nuclear weaponry. So what is it in Oracle Strategic Modeling world? Well, it was part of what they had Crystal Ball, which I think they've retired, but now they've integrated this into strategic modeling. So it's giving you a chance to do probabilistic financial models instead of the deterministic static ones. So you don't just say this is the number, you say this is the probability of that number. So let's talk about how we set up and run it. So this is going to give you a chance to set up how you think these pieces are going to go. So let's say I'm going to come in, I have an account here, and I'm just using the basics that I showed you earlier. I'm using unit volume times unit price equals product sales. So I'm going to select an account, and I'm going to select the simulation method. So when you're setting up your simulation, kind of think about how it's likely to behave. You know, what is it going to look like in terms of a statistical model? You want to evaluate the input in question, think everything you know about the conditions surrounding the input, review all these different descriptions. I'll go through them quickly. I'm not going to bore you with all this, but then you're going to try to select the distribution that makes sense. So just starting with what is the distribution, here's the normal distribution. This is the familiar bell curve. This is something like you're playing craps or something like that. It's most likely going to be around the mean. It's symmetric, and you can use it for like inflation price, asset price, certain currency fluctuations, these kind of things. The other piece is if I want to make it a little bit more straight, I can do a triangular. I also have the chance, you can kind of see different distributions, different parameters will have different parameters. So I can do minimum and maximum and likeliest. So here you kind of see the bottom one. I've skewed it a little bit, but I said I know it's going to be somewhere between 10% growth and -10, and most likely 5 though. So a little bit skewed to the right, not necessarily right in the middle. I also have a uniform distribution. There's an equal probability of it happening or not happening. It's equally going to be 10% growth or -10% growth. That's it. It's going to be anything in the middle, and there's nothing that's more likely than the rest. I also have a yes/no, kind of a Boolean distribution. I can change the probability of the Boolean. Instead of 50-50, I can do 25-10. This might be like, what's the chance of us getting the contract? What are the, you know, how is that going to impact our business? And I think we have a 25% getting it, then we should start thinking about, you know, how is that going to impact how the model does? Then we get into the log normal, the beta perts, and a few others. So once I've come into here and I've said, how do I set this up? So I'm coming in here and I'm saying my revenue drivers, my volume, I'm going to add that. I'm going to do a nice normal distribution on that. And then on my product price, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to put that in as a uniform distribution. Once you select it, if you had a number in there, it actually will come in and give you, like here, I clicked on it, it's giving me a mean and a standard deviation because I had the 4 and it came up with a standard deviation. I can come in and edit that, but it's giving you something based on what it's what you have already. And then I say, okay, what's the output? I'm going to take a look at this product sales. So right now I had a 4% volume growth, a 5% product price growth. That's going to give me 940.6 million. So here's my number. I'm going to click on it. Now I'm going to run the simulation. I'm going to iterate over all the times. I'm going to do 500 trials and see what we get. So what do we get? I come in and now I'm starting to see these analysis that comes out. I've got a base case scenario of 940 million is what I originally said. That's got about a 49, so basically a 50% chance of happening. So because we've kind of based it around those. But if somebody comes in and one of the directors comes in and says, you need to make 975 million, I would come in and say, I really don't have a lot of confidence in that. Right now, based on my inputs, I'm only seeing a 7% chance of making that kind of target. We're going to have to do something completely different if we want to do it, because it's probably not going to happen. We're not going to make 975 million unless we do something different, unless we make some different decisions. It's just a scenario that we're going to see that's just very improbable. You get a kind of a view of it there on the top in the graphic. Just throwing all those 500 times, there's just a few percentage, only 7% of those times actually makes that or beats it. So we really kind of start thinking about that. That's not the best way to, that's not the best scenario. I can start seeing the mean, the median, the probability of achieving that. So it's got some nice, powerful statistical tools, and it really gives you a good feeling for how I feel about these things happening. Once you run the simulation, you can get a visualization of how it's all kind of been put together. You can kind of see my normal distribution that I did on the unit volume. You can see it mostly tracked it. It's a little bit fuzzy. You can kind of see right in the middle, there's one that didn't happen that very often. And then there's a couple of outliers. So it's a lot more probabilistic than deterministic. It's not just the one number, it's 500 trials. If I did 1,000 trials, it will smooth out. If I did 10,000 trials, it would take forever, and it would smooth out even further. So it depends on this, but this is giving me a pretty good run with 500 trials. I can select the accounts, I can select multiple accounts, and counting integrity. Again, since everything's built through the model, I'm just flowing a whole bunch of numbers through it, but my whole thing is my net cash from operations, my cash in investing, my cash in finance. All these things now I have this stuff that are built because it's already linked together. I'm not building different models. I'm not saying what happens if I change this and I put this in there. If you try to do this in Excel, I mean, you're going to have to type in 500 different things and you're going to have 500 different results. And how do you analyze those? And you have to create a whole new thing. Just even if it was just those three simple things based on price times volume equals sales, and let alone trying to get it through how's that going to change my net cash provided by financing and the cash flow statement. So again, this really helps making those decisions when you start thinking about your dividend policy. How am I going to have my working capital? Is this project worth it? Does this acquisition make sense anymore? If I can throw this stuff through there, gives all these different probabilities. Basically, I'm coming up at the end saying, hey, I've got this much of a chance of achieving it. Let's start thinking about what do we need to do, what other decisions, what initiatives should we start doing, and anyway, getting away from fighting Excel and the links and getting into starting to do some true finance, some really strategic thinking and higher level pieces. So I'll go through some of the experience. I'll leave a little bit of time here at the end for some Q&A, but let's go through some design tips and tricks. Some things I've seen with implementing these strategic modeling, and this is the same as I've seen in doing it in Excel, is trying to fit every aspect into the business, into your LRP, trying to figure out what I'm doing out in 2031. It gets down to, there's a lot of pieces, but you kind of, if you think the 80-20 rule, if you model every single thing out like you would for the forecast, then you're just making it so inflexible that it's really hard to deal with. And then it's just taking a whole bunch of time updating models and not thinking about what decisions I should be making. You lose your agility. You're not really doing scenario modeling at that point. There, you're just kind of fighting in and making a really detailed model that is going to be, as I mentioned, incorrect, because the real world will happen and things will be incorrect on the way in the very long range. So you want to be able to, it's better to know what your ranges are as opposed to knowing one number that I'm really, really feel good about, but I know that's going to be wrong because something I can't predict right now is going to happen. It also makes the maintenance, and it's just your team sitting there fighting your models. The other piece is there's some change management. This is different. It is not just Excel. I've gone through and had implementations and had arguments because people don't want to accept it because they've presented something in their Excel models before, and that can't be wrong. And you basically sit there and fight through their Excel models and find out where their error is on their Excel model because it doesn't have that base, that accounting integrity. Something might have been missed, a link might have been wrong, or it might have gone to the wrong part of the cash flow statement, et cetera. That's all because it's all Wild West. It's completely custom. Here, it's forcing it into using accounting integrity. So really, the key is get your design first. Start thinking about where you want the models. What level of granularity should a model be? Is it going to be a plant? Is it going to be a region? Is it going to be something like that? Where am I going to start thinking about it? Why am I doing a long range plan? What's the point of this? The point is, I need to make some changes in the decision maker's mind. What kind of things would give them a different number, would give them, let's say, let's do this, or let's add capital, let's reduce the capital spend, what kind of stuff like that. Let's change the machines, let's do this, let's hold on to these a little bit longer, let's up the maintenance, etc. Again, the change management, just getting everybody on board. It's not replacing the Excel models, you're not taking it away, but you're enhancing their Excel models, you're making them better, you're making them quicker, faster, easier to update, and more of a focus on what the results are. The other pieces there are, it's gotten significantly better, but as it was a new product, when it went to the cloud, there was some issues in the Oracle SR system. Call them, feed back with them, and just stay with it. And everything you do helps the community. It helps everybody that's using this. It's kind of one of the beauties. It's ever evolving. Every month, there's a new patch update to planning, and so that really helps Cloud Customer Connect, et cetera. That's really helping the community and helping build a stronger, more robust product. The other thing is when you can, maybe start simple, start building something, basic, and then grow from there. Don't try to get every single aspect of your company into one model right at the beginning. Start using things you can use. Use the functionality when you can. Use some of the features, count groupings, make it really easy. That way I can, maybe if I'm looking at inventory, I can look at the sales outside. I can look at all those pieces, income statement, balance sheet pieces together. I built one little account group because I'm the kind of guy that looks at those pieces, or that's my role, is to look at these pieces all together. I don't have to scroll between where does this go, where does that go. It's like Excel, you could just have it all in one sheet and one little thing. I don't have to scroll around and try to figure out where does this impact in the income statement, where does it contract in the balance sheet, etc. If you can use some items like the debt scheduler, that's nice because as soon as I build it, I put the term, and some of the details about my debt. It's automatically integrated into my financial statement. I got my interest expense, I get the short-term and long-term liabilities, it's all integrated there. Sometimes your debt may be a little bit too complex. I've seen this in some airlines that have hundreds of different enhanced equipment trust certificates and things that are going to be a lot more detailed. And sometimes at that point, it's just as easy to, maybe you have the person over in Treasury working on all those little minute pieces, just give you the schedule, and then you can start putting these pieces in. So you can override these kind of things. I could have my interest expense coming from elsewhere and my short-term, long-term liabilities. But if you can use it, it's helpful to use that. Using the consolidation function, again, thinking about where your models live and how do they want to look up. And as I mentioned, it's so easy to create a model off of other models. So if you have homogeneous type parts of your business, but you want to be able to see them in different scenarios, take it and then build one really good one. And then you can just take that and then copy, and then pop them into a consolidation structure. So it really, instead of building bits and pieces together, if you can build one and then copy into it, it really helps up using the upfront. So in conclusion, business planning is really important in these uncertain times. It will be fun once we get back to precedented times, because we are in unprecedented times a lot lately. I wanted to give you an introduction to what scenario modeling is. I wanted to show you how to create scenarios with Scenario Manager. And then I just kind of wanted to take the next level and show you some of the Monte Carlo simulations. So I am turned for some questions and answering. Anybody has any questions, feel free to pop something into the chat. Or if there's any other sections you want me to go back in and have any more details, but otherwise appears to be pretty quiet right now. Yes, and if you have any additional questions or you think of something later, you can email info@interrel.com. Okay, well, I guess if that is it, we were able to cover quite a bit today. And again, if you have any other questions, please let me know. And thanks again for attending.